into the specifics and details of these methodologies. It will suffice at this stage to know that first and foremost, a salesperson finds prospective customers. What does he do next? Now, after finding prospective customers, he has detailed discussions with them. That is his role. He sits with the customer, discusses with them in detail to find out what is it that the customer really needs. When a customer seeks out a salesperson, generally he has a problem that he is trying to solve. It is the salesperson's duty to find out what is this problem that the customer is seeking a solution for. What does he hope to gain by using a product? What are the problems that he hopes to avoid by using a product? This is what a salesperson should do. He should understand the needs of the customer in detail. Now, once he understands the needs of a customer in detail, he then gets back to his office, talks to his colleagues, both in the commercial department and the technical department, and then designs a tailor-made, specific, custom-made proposal for this customer. He wants this proposal that he is going to offer the customer to address all the needs of the customer, to help him solve the problem that he wants, to help him gain and achieve what he wants to achieve by using this product. Once the proposal is ready, the customer receives the proposal from the salesperson. Now, we are living in a real world. It is highly unlikely that the customer will immediately accept the proposal in its totality. He is likely to seek clarifications. He may have doubts, and he may even have objections. Now, the salesperson's duty is to sort out all these clarifications that the customer seeks. He should clear the doubts of the customer, and if there are any objections, he should handle the objections in a manner that it is satisfactory to the customer. In short, the customer should accept the solution that the salesperson is offering. Now, once the customer is convinced that all his clarifications, all his doubts have been handled properly, he has no more doubts, whatever objections he raised have been handled, then the salesperson moves the sales process towards the closure, which means he tries to negotiate with the customer, arrives at a commercial solution which is mutually acceptable to both of them. The technical clarifications are made to everyone's satisfaction, and then the sale is made. And most probably, the salesperson returns with the purchase order. Now, there are two types of sales models basically. The first sales model is what we call a business to business sales model. What do we mean by this? If there is a business manufacturing a product or service and selling this business to another business which is using this to manufacture its product, then it is called a business to business sale, or in management jargon, it's called a B2B sale. Now, let me give you an example to make this more clearer. Let us assume that you are working for a company which manufactures automotive paints. Now, there are several types of paints. You have paints which you use to paint your walls. Automotive paints are generally paints which are used to paint metal surfaces. Now, this automotive paint that you are selling can be used to paint metal surfaces like motorcycles, scooters, automobiles. This is a classic case where one business is manufacturing the product, in this case, automotive paints, and another business is using this automotive paints after buying it to manufacture their own products, which are scooters, motorcycles, or cars. This is a classic example of a business to business sale. The next model is what we call a business to customer sale, or a B2C sale in management jargon. Now, let us assume that there is a business which manufactures a product or service, but in this case, it sells it directly to the customer. Then, this sort of sales model is called the business to customer sales model. For example, let us assume that you are working for a company which manufactures mobile phones. Now, you would sell these mobile phones directly to the customer. Now, here is a case where we have a business manufacturing a product and selling it directly to the customer. This is an example of what we call a business to customer sale, or a B2C sale. Now, let me reiterate. In this webinar this morning, we are primarily going to focus on the business to business sales model, the B2B sales model. Why is sales a great career option? Now, many of you could be youngsters in their final years in college, or maybe you're just stepping out of college and looking at various career options. Now, why is it that I say sales is a great career option? Now, irrespective of what product or service the company is manufacturing, or to which business they are selling, or wherever in the world that they are situated, every business needs sales people. Sales is the fulcrum of every company, and therefore sales people are required in all industries all over the world. Unlike a technical person who's trained specifically in a particular technology, in a particular software program, or in a particular programming language, a salesperson's skills are much more common and are required everywhere. Yes, you have to update your skills. From time and again, technology will make sales processes change. However, the job opportunities for salespeople are far more than in most other professions where there are severe restrictions on the area of your knowledge or skill. On an average, the remuneration for a salesperson is extremely attractive as compared to people in other fields. Moreover, there are very attractive commissions which are part of the flexible component of your pay scale in the sales department. These flexible components, or the sales commissions, are based on your performance. Therefore, unlike other professions, there is an immediate reflection of your performance on your pay. If you perform well, then you get paid more, and the reward of your performance is immediately visible. It is there for everyone to see, in most cases in the very next month. Therefore, not only do you get paid well, there is a direct correlation in sales between your performance and your pay scale. Unlike in other departments, if you are a salesperson, the more you sell, the more you perform, the more you earn. Unlimited growth. Now, many departments like the commercial department, the engineering department, the design department, there is a solid hierarchical structure which is more or less fixed. Now, I'm not stating that the sales department does not have a hierarchical structure. Yes, it has, but it is far more flexible than the hierarchical structure in the other departments. And therefore, when you perform well, not only you are rewarded for your performance in basically your pay scale, but also you move up the corporate ladder, you move up the structure in the sales department, and your performance does not limit your growth just to your pay scale and your perquisites, but you are also rewarded in terms of position and responsibility. Growth is unlimited, growth is fast, growth is visible. Continuous personal development. Salespeople have to continuously update themselves. And in most cases, the company itself recognizes this need. And therefore, they constantly nominate salespeople to attend self development seminars and training workshops. Salespeople, by virtue of the fact that they on a day-to-day basis meet several people in various strata of society and from various disciplines, they are far more exposed to current and emerging trends in various industries, technologies, and management practices. This enables them to a large extent, this assists them to embark on a path of continuous personal development. Sales is the safest job going around. Now, why do I say this? Even during difficult times, or rather, more so during difficult times, that is when, during a recession, when times are difficult, that is when a company needs sales more desperately. And therefore, salespeople are generally more wanted by companies and not retrenched even during recession. I can safely say that sales can be considered to be one of the safest professions going around. So, is sales a flourishing profession? Is sales a great career option? Yes, definitely yes. As long as businesses buy products and services in their line of work, they will always need salespeople to guide them and to assist them in making the correct decision. The sales model may change, the techniques may vary from time to time, and the emphasis placed on various stages of the sales process may differ. However, the need for salespeople can never ever reduce. However, a word of caution: the days of the slick talking, slippery salesmen are long gone. Those days are dead and buried. Today, selling has become far more subtle. Selling is all about solving a problem for the customer, all about building trust and a relationship with the customer. Now, a salesperson must have a lot of knowledge in order to perform his role commendably, competently. What is the knowledge that a salesperson needs to possess to enable him perform his role in a competent and commendable manner? First, the customer. The salesperson should have a clear idea of who the customer is. What is the customer's problem that he is seeking a solution for? What are the gains that the customer hopes to achieve by using our product? What are the pitfalls that he hopes to avoid? The salesperson should have an absolutely thorough knowledge of the product or service that he is selling. What can his product do? More importantly, what can his product not do? Where is he going to position his product? Which segment of the market is he going to address? The salesperson should also have a clear idea of the market that he's going to operate in, which is the market in which he is going to focus on selling his product. A market has different segments: cost conscious segment, the quality conscious segment, the premium segment. Which segment of the market is the salesperson going to focus on selling his product? What is the competition in the market? Who are his competitors? How are their products different from the product that our salesperson is selling? Are they better? Are they not as good? In what way? A salesperson, in short, should have a thorough knowledge of these four factors: the customer he is selling his product to, the product that he is selling, the market in which he is operating, and the competition existing in the market. Now, we shall get into these in detail. The customer. When we say the salesperson should have an in-depth knowledge of the customer, what are we talking about? The salesperson should know what business the customer is in. What is his market share? Who are his competitors? Now, To make it easier to understand, let me give you an example. Let us take the case of a company which is manufacturing automotive paints, the same example that we took previously. Now, let us be a bit more clearer. This company which makes automotive paints makes high gloss, long lasting, premium, expensive automotive paints. Now, when you're going to sell this product, you should have a thorough idea of what products the customer is selling. Let us, for example, assume that the customer you are targeting and approaching sells motorcycles, yes, but maybe he sells motorcycles on the budget end of the segment, the budget end segment of the market. Maybe he sells motorcycles to the cost conscious customer. Uh, for example, let me give you some names. Maybe he sells motorcycles like a Hero Splendor or a Bajaj Platina or a Bajaj Boxer, which are very inexpensive motorcycles, which primarily cater to the cost conscious customer. Now, if your customer is manufacturing such motorcycles, it is highly unlikely that he is going to invest in your automotive paint, which is high gloss, long lasting, premium automotive paint. It is more likely that this paint is going to be used by customers who manufacture premium motorcycles, motorcycles at the quality conscious end of the market. To give you a few names, maybe motorcycles like the Bajaj Dominar or the RS200 or maybe the Yamaha FZ, the Honda CBR. Now, these are some examples of premium motorcycles, and these motorcycles are targeted at the quality conscious premium segment of the market, and they are therefore more likely to use your paint product, which is a premium, high gloss, high quality, long lasting product. That is what I mean when I say you should have a thorough knowledge of who your customer is, which segment of the market is he catering to. You also should have an idea of his market share. Is he a market leader? Is he a new entrant into this market? Who are his competitors? Once you look at his competitors in depth, you may have an idea, and you may have uh, a few more prospective customers to pitch your product to. Do a detailed SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Look at the strengths of the customer. What are his weaknesses? What are the opportunities that he possesses? What are the threats to his business? And when you're looking at the customer and discussing with him in depth, you should get a fair idea of who the user for the product is, who is the decision maker, and who is the influencer. This will, to a great extent, enable you make the correct pitch to the correct person. Once again, let me give you an example. Since all of you are college students, I think I will stay with the motorcycle or a scooter example, probably more relevant to many of you. Let us assume you're a college student and you want to buy a motorcycle. I think it is a safe assumption to say that your father is going to fund the money for the motorcycle. And therefore, your father is a very crucial decision maker. Yes, you may also play a part, albeit a small role, in the decision making process. You are likely to be the user, or maybe if you have a brother of more or less the same age, he could also use the motorcycle. Who is the influencer? Now, yes, you may influence the decision to a certain extent. You may try to keep showing your father advertisements on the print media or on the visual media about high-end sports motorcycles like the Pulsars, the FZs, the CBRs of the world. So you are an influencer. Your mother will definitely be an influencer. She will go and tell your father, please don't get all these fast motorcycles for our son. This is so dangerous. Every day we hear horror stories of accidents. If you have to get him a motorcycle at all, get him a small motorcycle which will not go fast. She is probably talking about vehicles like the Bajaj Boxer or the Hero Splendor. And your father, Since he's got to foot the bill for the motorcycle, he also has to foot the bill for petrol. So he's probably worried about the mileage. So he's looking at which bike will give the best mileage so that my son doesn't come and trouble me time and again for money. Therefore, I hope it is now clear who the user is, who the decision maker is, and who the influencer is. The reason why you need to make this differentiation is you need to make your sales pitch in a very, very different manner to the user, the decision maker, and the influencer based on what problem they are trying to solve when you buy the product. Let me digress a bit with the same example and tell you, if I were a salesperson and I were making this pitch for this motorcycle, when I talk to the user, who's the college going student, I will tell him how fast the motorcycle can go, the 0 to 60 in so many seconds. Look at the paint, it looks so swanky. It's got LED headlights, it's got this LED blinkers. Uh, it is so impressive. You go to college, your friends will be stunned. They will all want to ride your motorcycle. And I would swell the sleekness of the motorcycle, the speed, whatever he is looking for in a motorcycle to him. When I go and talk to his mother, obviously I will not emphasize these points. She is worried about the safety. So what I would do is I would talk to her and tell her, look, it has got ABS. And because it has got ABS, it is very, very safe. It's a safe bike to ride. I will talk about the safety of the bike. And when I talk to the decision maker, which is the father in this case, what I will do is I will talk to him basically about the mileage of the product, how it gives good mileage, how it is long lasting, how the maintenance will work out cheaper for him because it's an Indian motorcycle, it's got local components, it'll be cheaper to maintain, it'll be cheaper to run. That is why once you make this clear segmentation, the differentiation between who the user is, who the decision maker and the influencer is, things become much more clearer for you as a salesperson. You know what is the story you're going to pitch to each of these people. What is the problem that is seeking a solution for? Once again, here you need to know whether they are what is the reason they are buying a motorcycle. Is it to enable the son commute from home to college? Or is he going to go for a job? Is it for commuting to work? Or is it for just fun to go around with his friends in the evening? It is necessary that you have a clear idea of all this, as this will enable you make the right pitch to the right person. We then come to the product. It is essential for us, for the salesperson, basically to know everything about the product. What the product can do, what it cannot do, what are its strong points, what are its weak points. You generally focus on your strong points, emphasize your strong points. You do not emphasize or even talk about your weak points. What are the features of your product? What are the benefits? Let me digress once again to clarify the difference between features and benefits. Features are basically the properties of a product. Now, let's stay with the motorcycle example. If you're selling motorcycle to the same, let's look at the same scenario, and you talk about ABS. Now, when you're talking about ABS for safety, when you go to the mother and tell her this bike has ABS. Now, ABS is a feature. Now, when you say the bike has ABS, it probably makes no sense to the mother. Many customers who buy motorcycles do not have an idea at all, or have a very, 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 very superficial idea of what ABS is. Now, this is a feature. When you talk to a customer, you don't sell features, you sell benefits. Now, what is the benefit of having ABS in a motorcycle? The benefit of having ABS in a motorcycle is when you brake suddenly, when there is a panic braking situation, the bike will not skid and will come to a halt. You will always be in control of your bike because an ABS will prevent the skidding of the bike in most cases. Therefore, when you sell ABS to a customer, you sell safety. You tell that this makes the bike more safe. You can brake suddenly in a panic situation also, and your bike will not skid. This is the difference between a feature and a benefit. Always remember, when you sell a product, you sell benefits, you do not sell features. Therefore, a salesperson should have a very, very clear idea of what his product can do, what it cannot do, what are the features, and thereby what are the benefits. The market. The salesperson needs to have a very, very clear idea of the market that is operating in also. You should have an idea of the various segmentation of the market. We spoke about the segmentation of the market in the motorcycle example. There is a quality conscious segment of the market. There is a cost conscious segment of the market. There's a premium segment of the market. And then there is also surprisingly an all-rounder segment of the market, as I call it, where people need a little bit of everything, a little bit of cost consciousness, a little bit of premiumness, a little bit of speed, so on and so forth. But unless we are able to segment the market clearly in our minds, we will not be able to focus and position a product to the correct segment of the market. We should know what market share our potential customer has. If we are a premium product, do we pitch a product to the market leader? Or in certain cases, do we pitch a product to the number 2 in the market who's trying desperately to become number 1? And therefore, he is willing to invest more on premiumness. What is the competition? What is the nature of competition? Is it a very stiff competition? Is there a clear market leader and a few also rans? Or is there, equal competition among 2 or 3 people who share the market almost in equal quantities? Is there a technology transformation in the market? It is very, very important for the salesperson to be in touch with what is happening in the market. To give an example, if you are a person selling to the automotive industry, you should be aware that what happens is that today in the automotive industry, there is a BS6 compliance which came in this financial year. Therefore, various specifications for motorcycles became mandatory. If I am not mistaken, motorcycles of a certain cubic capacity and above were forced to have ABS. Certain motorcycles with cubic capacity below this level were allowed to do with CBS. ABS was not mandatory. Now, all these rules and regulations which are mandated by the government or other trade bodies and regulatory authorities, you must be aware. You must be aware of what is happening in the market. The competition, it is very, very important to know what the competition is doing. More often than not, if the competition is focusing on a particular segment of the market or on a new emerging technology, this is actually a tip to you to have a closer look at that technology, to have a closer focus on that market segment. There must be a reason. Maybe something is changing. Maybe there's a technology transformation coming up. Hence, as a salesperson, it is essential you do a detailed SWOT analysis, a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, analysis of the competition. See what market share they have. Is their market share growing? Is their market share reducing? If their market share is growing, then obviously they are doing something correctly. Therefore, there is no harm in learning from the competition. Let us now look at the basic sales cycle. Now, irrespective of whatever product or service you're selling, or regardless of wherever in the world you are selling and you are based, this sales cycle primarily and basically remains the same. Now, what is the first step in the sales cycle? The first step in the sales cycle is research. And then you identify prospects, you understand the prospect's needs, you make the proposal, you handle objections, you negotiate, and then you close the deal. Now, research. Now, let us use the same example. Let us assume that this company which makes automotive paints, has now employed you as a salesperson. You are a young, fresh student, a young, bright kid from a management school. You've got this job, maybe campus recruitment, and you go on the first day, and the manager tells you, "Oh, you're a young, bright kid. You have an MBA degree. Fine. This is what they tell you about the product. They train you in the product, maybe for a couple of days, and say, this is the product. You make automotive paints. Primarily, we have different paints, but you are in this. You have to focus on this premium category of paints, high gloss, long lasting premium paint. Go ahead, start selling. You must have learned this in your business school. So what do? The first step is you have to research. In order to identify your prospective customer, you have to do research. What do? The first thing is you go on the internet. You have search engine optimizers. Use your search engines and find out. You now know that you're selling automotive paints. Now, your first task is to find out all the automotive companies which need paints. Now, these could be manufacturers of motorcycles, scooters, cars, SUVs, and manufacturers of commercial vehicles like LMVs, tractors, so on and so forth. Now, you go on the internet, go on to your search engine, and make a broad list of all these possible customers. Now, once you have made this list, the next step is to identify the websites of these customers. Go to the website of each and every one of this prospective, very broad prospective list that you have made. Look at their websites, understand what products they are making, what is their product range, where are they situated, where are they located, where is the manufacturing facility located, where is the head office located, where is the purchase decision being made. Once you have got the amount of information that you can get from websites, the next thing is collect the emails of these companies. Now, in each and every case, you may have some doubts regarding the product range, regarding the location of the factory, regarding the purchase decision, the purchase process, where the purchasing decision is made in terms of geographical location, the purchasing cycle, so on and so forth. You can then send emails directly to these customers asking for clarifications for your doubts and even requesting for a one-to-one meeting. Trade shows. Every industry has a trade show, mostly annual, sometimes more frequently as well. For example, the automotive industry has trade shows annually in Pragati Maidan in New Delhi, and then there are several other smaller trade shows in various regions of the country. It is essential as a salesperson that you should attend these trade shows to gather as much information as you can about these prospective customers and what is it that they have to offer to you as a salesperson. Do they have potential to buy from you? If so, how much, where, how often, how frequently? These are questions to which you should seek answers. Trade journals. Every industry has trade journals. Please go through all the trade journals and try to collect as much information as possible that you can about the industries and the various potential customers and what they can offer to you as a customer. Therefore, once you have conducted your research, you should identify the prospect based on the product that you're selling. If, for example, you have products in the automotive paint industry, let us say, in this example, you are given products which can address also the cost conscious segment of the market. Then you know that if your product is very competitively priced, then it can definitely cater to the needs and the requirements of the cost conscious segment of the market, of the budget segment of the market. And then you know which segment of the customer's market that you should address and you should target. And once you segment the market based on whether the market is cost conscious, whether it's quality conscious, whether it's a premium market, then once you understand this, you will be able to focus on the correct segment of the market based on your idea of the segmentation of the market and the product that you're selling. The next step is to try and understand the customer needs. You have identified the prospect. You now meet the customer, find out what is the problem that is seeking to resolve. Invariably, when a customer is willing to see a salesperson, he has already been using a product. He obviously has some issue with the product. Either he has a problem with the quality of the product, probably he has an issue with the price of the product, or maybe the delivery is not consistent, maybe they're not delivering on time like they want, or they're not delivering the quantity that they want. There is some problem. So when you discuss with the customer, seek to have a clear understanding of what is the problem that the customer is trying to solve when he wants to buy a product. What is the gains that he's expecting? Maybe he's expecting better quality, maybe he's expecting better service. What is it, the pitfall that he hopes to avoid? There is a possibility that the existing supplier let him down in peak season. When there was peak season and when demand was very high, maybe his existing supplier did not supply on time the quantity required. So maybe this is what he's trying to avoid by approaching us. What are his specific commercial needs? Every customer has specific commercial needs or technical needs. There are some customers who need that the product be delivered to the factory which is located far away. I have known of several cases where the factory is located far away and in a sort of an unapproachable area. Therefore, the big trucks and the trailers cannot go there. Therefore, they want deliveries in smaller quantities, in smaller trucks. Each and every customer could have specific techno commercial needs, and it is the salesperson's role to find out what it is that the specific commercial need of the customer is. Based on his understanding of what the customer needs and the customer wants, what are the gains that he hopes to achieve, what are the pitfalls that he hopes to avoid, the salesperson then he goes back to the sales office, sits with his colleagues, both in the technical department and the commercial department, and then designs a specific tailor-made proposal which will solve the problem, which will give the customer the solution that he's seeking. It will offer him the gains that he's expecting by using a product, which will make sure he avoids the past pitfalls. He will not have the bad experience that he had in the past. And all his technical commercial needs that he wants will be satisfied. Now, we live in the real world. It is not, sorry, more often than not, it is unlikely that the customer will accept a proposal in totality. He will have doubts. He is going to seek clarifications and reassurances. He will have some concerns and he will have some objections. Now, please, please, please do not panic. Do not become nervous. Do not go on the defensive. This is a natural step in every sales process. There is no need for concern. All you need to do is now listen very carefully to the customer. Acknowledge his concerns. Listen very carefully to the customer to understand what his real concern is, what his real issue is. Once you understand what his real concern is, what his real issue is, then you do not have to answer the customer straight away. You can go back to your office, buy some time from the customer, go back to your office, consult with your colleagues, both in the sales department, both in the commercial department and in the technical department, and work out a solution which will solve the customer's problem in the best manner possible. Once you have the solution, come back to the customer, explain the solution in detail, and offer the customer the solution. Confirm that the customer is now satisfied with the solution and all his doubts have been clarified. He has no further doubts. And then once the customer is totally satisfied with the solution, all his doubts have been clarified, then move the sale ahead. You are now in a situation where you now need to close the sale. Negotiate with the commercial department, arrive at an agreement on the price and other commercial terms. Now, I have noticed that many salespeople try to rush through these various steps because they are nervous, because they just want to rush things and get the purchase order or the sales order in their hand, because they are worried that something may come up at the last moment. Please do not do so. After you have negotiated and arrived at the agreement, please clarify and confirm all the technical and commercial terms. Once again, I reiterate, clarify and confirm all technical and commercial terms to ensure you do not have problems later on. And when you make the final pro forma invoice quotation, or whatever you may call it, make sure that all these technical and commercial terms which are agreed upon are clearly mentioned in your final proposal, and then collect the purchase order. Now, most of you think that once the sales order is collected, the sales process is complete. Most salespeople are under the mistaken notion that the sales process ends here. Nothing can be farther from the truth. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, the sales begins here. It is essential for the salesperson to be proactive and to be in constant touch with the user department. Now, since we are talking about a business to business sales process here, a B2B sales model, let us assume that you are supplying a technical equipment to the customer. As a salesperson, it is imperative that you talk to your technical department and make sure that that equipment is installed and commissioned in a proper manner. Proper installation and commissioning of the equipment is 50% of the problem solved. Most problems occur in equipment due to improper installation and commissioning. Moreover, after the product is installed and commissioned, get your technical department to train the user department, the end user department, in the proper usage of the equipment. Make sure that your technical department trains all the people in the end user department of the various features of the product, the various controls, and how to properly use the equipment. This is once again a major cause for concern and a major cause for problems later on in the equipment: improper usage, because the end user department people have not been properly trained. Now, you must go a step further. You must then have your technical department people train the maintenance department of the customer in the proper maintenance of the equipment, both preventive and breakdown maintenance. This will reassure the customer and also the technical and the maintenance department of the end user that, look, this is an equipment. We are now clearly trained as to how to use the equipment, what are the various controls, what are the features. And moreover, even if we have small issues, our maintenance people know how to manage these issues. Now, once you do this, you have the equipment properly installed and commissioned, you have the people trained in the proper usage of the equipment, you have the maintenance department of the customer trained in the proper maintenance techniques, both preventive and breakdown maintenance. You still have to maintain contact with the end user department on a continuous basis. In every technical department, there are always upgrades. As an equipment manufacturer, you will be constantly upgrading your equipment. You will be always privy, and you will always have information regarding technical development which is happening in that particular field. As a sales professional, you must constantly keep in touch with the user department, keep their engineers, both in the end user department and the maintenance department, fully informed of what are the technical developments which are happening in this field, in the industry? What are the upgrades that you're making to the equipment? Will that be useful for them? Do they want you to fix the same upgrade in their equipment as well? This is all the post-sales relationship is about. Be proactive, be in constant touch with the customer. Now, please have a look at this slide. Why do customers leave a sales person? Why do they go to some other company to buy their products? Well, a small percentage of them die. 1% die, 3% exit the market, 5% suddenly you may find that one customer's friend has come into this business and therefore he wants to buy from his friend. Less than 10% go with a competitor, 14% because they're dissatisfied with the service. But please note, a huge chunk, almost 70%, 68% of customers leave because they believe you do not care about them. Now, let us go back to our post-sales relationship. If you are proactive, if you are in constant touch and go through these various steps that we have enumerated here and conduct a post-sales relationship in a perfect manner, there is just no way that a customer is going to think that you do not care about them. And therefore, a customer will never, ever leave you. This will lead to what we call better customer retention. This is a great customer retention strategy. What happens if you retain customers? Retained customers are a huge source of repeat orders. As long as you keep them satisfied, as long as you take care of them well, they will continue to come back to you again and again and again and buy from you. And therefore, your sales graph keeps pointing northwards. Moreover, also remember, a retained customer, a satisfied customer, a happy customer is a constant source of referrals. He is always ready to refer your name to his contemporaries in the industry, to his friends, his contacts, anyone who can probably use your product. And therefore, the post-sales relationship is a crucial factor which will determine the success of your customer retention strategy, and therefore will determine how many repeat orders you get and how many referrals you get. Now, what differentiates the men from the boys? There are a lot of people in sales today. I know a lot of sales people. Why is it that only a few of the sales people are extremely successful? What are the qualities they have imbibed in themselves that they are so successful and we call them sales professionals? We shall now discuss 20 such qualities that, in my opinion, a salesperson needs to imbibe if he wants to make the transition and become a sales professional. 1. Product knowledge. It is essential that a sales professional have in-depth knowledge of the product. We have seen this time and again during the course of this webinar. He should have in-depth knowledge of the product. Sorry. He should have in-depth knowledge of the product, a clear understanding of what the product can do, what it cannot do. He should also have a very, very clear idea of the market, which segment of the market that he's addressing. Why is he addressing that segment of the market? Specifically, are there other segments he can also address? If so, how does he have to pitch his product in? So, in-depth, thorough knowledge of the product and the market. Good communication skills, active listening. Now, when I talk about good communication skills, I am not just referring to the ability a person has to stand in front of a huge crowd of 50, 100 people and make a great speech extempore. Yes, if you have the talent, it helps. But I am more focused on active listening. You have to listen to the customer actively to find out what he is saying, to read between the lines, and to decipher what his real problem is, what is the solution he's actually seeking. Please remember, God gave us one mouth and two ears. This is a constant reminder to use it in the same proportion. Therefore, talk less, listen more. Listen to what the customer has to say to you. And once you listen actively, you will understand what the customer is trying to convey to you. And this will enable you, to a large extent, to propose the correct solution. Be prepared, organized, and confident. Always be prepared. Never ever go unprepared to a sales meeting. If you have a sales meeting with a prospective customer, take some time off and sit down and think, what is it that you want to achieve by this particular sales meeting? Are you trying to make a sale? Are you trying to provide more information to the customer? Are you going to give him a catalog? Are you going to show him a video on your laptop? Once the objective of the sales meeting is clear, then you have to be organized. If, for example, you are going to hand over a quotation or some technical leaflets, catalogs to the customer, please take time to collect all these papers, put it in a separate plastic folder, and then put it in your briefcase. I have seen, unfortunately, so many salespeople who walk into my office and then open their briefcase and then start digging into the briefcase, searching frantically for the paper that they want to show me. It creates such a bad impression on the prospective customer. If, for example, you are going to show the prospective customer a video, please make sure that you remove this video from the folder and place it in a very convenient, easily accessible place in your laptop, preferably on your desktop, on a temporary basis. So that when you open the laptop, you are not doing the same thing and searching all over your laptop, trying to locate the folder in which that particular video file is. Once you are prepared for a meeting and once you are organized, trust me, it is that much more easier to be confident. You have a clear idea of what you want to achieve in the sales meeting. You are prepared for it, you are organized, and then present your best confident self to the customer. Self motivated and a positive mindset. Please do not get me wrong. A sales profession is not an easy profession. It is not that every time you go and meet a customer that you are going to get an order immediately. There will be several setbacks. There will be several rejections. And in some cases, you will have a series of rejections and setbacks continuously. But you cannot let this affect your morale. You cannot let this series of setbacks and rejections depress you. You will have to be self motivated. You must have a positive mindset. You must bounce back and you must take your briefcase, carry all your leaflets and all your sales material, and visit the next customer with a buoyant step, full of confidence that you will be able to make this sale, convert this customer. You must always have a positive mindset and you must be self motivated. There will not be someone who will come in and motivate you. As a sales professional, you must have the ability to motivate yourself. Manage your emotions. There are bound to be several situations where you are under tremendous pressure. There will be pressure from the customer, the purchasing officer, or the purchasing manager may be screaming at you for no fault of yours. It could either be a fault from your technical department, or maybe the transporter did not supply the truck on time, the transporter's truck broke down, or the guide mistakenly supplied it to the wrong location. But whatever the situation, whatever the pressure, you cannot lose your temper. You cannot let your emotions get the better of yourself. You will always have to manage your emotions, present a very balanced outlook to the customer, and try and sort out the problem, whatever the problem is. Sorry. We have also seen that you must manage the post-sales relationship and the follow-up thoroughly. The more effective the post-sales relationship is, the more easier it is to retain customers and the more easy it is to get repeat orders. Personalize your message. Remember that prior to selling your company, prior to selling your product, you are selling yourself. And therefore, you should personalize the message. You should make the message all about you. And as a salesperson, you should have full trust, belief, and confidence in the product that you are selling. If you do not have total trust and confidence and belief in your product or the service that you're selling, there is no way you are going to transfer the confidence and trust to your customer. How can you make the customer have confidence and trust in your product when you don't have confidence in the and trust in the product yourself? Therefore, always believe and trust the product that you are selling. Develop closing skills. Once you have moved past the handling objection stage and the negotiation stage, you should close the sale. I know a lot of salespeople who go through the entire sales process but have problems closing the sale. You should develop closing skills. You should slowly direct the customer towards closure and collecting the purchase order. Always keep prospecting, always look for potential customers. Whenever you're sitting in the reception room waiting to meet a customer, if you see other people who could be prospective customers, keep an eye open, keep an ear open for all such opportunities. And then when you go and meet the customer, ask him to refer to the person who's sitting outside if you could be a potential customer. So a sales professional is always prospecting. He always keeps his eyes and ears open for prospective customers. Be honest and polite. Please remember, the days of the slick talking, slippery salesmen are long gone. The slick talking salesman who could sell ice to an Eskimo, that is history. Today, selling is all about building a relationship. Please be honest. First and foremost, my advice to all budding sales professionals and even to sales professionals who are already in a sales career, please never ever make a promise you cannot keep. Once you lie, the customer will never ever trust you again. Always be honest and please be polite, not just to the customer, but to everyone you meet, to the receptionist in the lobby of the customer's office, to the security man at the gate. Always be polite, be courteous, and be well behaved. This is what your mother taught you. This is what the primary school teacher taught you. And they are not wrong. They are 100% right. If you are honest, if you are polite, if you are courteous, and if you are well behaved, it is easy to like you as a person. Once I like you as a person, it is easy for me to trust you as a salesperson. And once I can trust you as a salesperson, it is easy for me to build a long and a long standing and a very good relationship with you. That is how we build personal relationship and trust. Another point I would like to make is always be punctual. Remember, you have the right to waste your time, but you do not have the right to waste someone else's time. If you have an appointment to meet a customer at 9 o'clock at his office, my advice to you in today's day and age, please make sure that you are at the gate of the office at 8:30. Remember, today, with all the complications around us, there is a lot of time which is spent at the security gate. They give you a hand sanitizer, they check your temperature, you have to fill a zillion forms to confirm that your temperature is normal in this COVID-19 scare. And then in many cases, They do not allow your vehicle inside the factory. So you may have to walk from the security gate to the office building, which in many cases is far off. Then you enter the reception. Now, if you're late for the appointment, you will rush through this thing, you will run, and you will be panting when you are allowed to meet the customer. This is not the signs of a professional salesperson. Once you are far ahead of time, you come in time, you seat yourself at the lobby and wait for the customer to call you at least 5 to 10 minutes before the actual appointment time. This will enable you present a professional face in a great way. View customer success as your own. In the past, in the days gone by, a salesperson viewed the customer as an adversary, as someone he had to win over. Now, those days are gone and dead. Today, a customer is a friend and an ally, and the customer should treat you as an ally, a person who you can trust, and a person you can turn to in times of trouble. Therefore, view your customer's success as your own. Help your customers succeed. The more your customers succeed, the more you succeed in selling your product to the customer. Be persistent and be resourceful. As I told you earlier, sales is not for the faint hearted. There will be several rejections you will face, there will be several setbacks that you may have, and you need to be persistent. Never ever give up. You have to be resourceful. If you have an objection, if you have an obstacle in your way, you have to find ways and means to go around the obstacle. If there is no way and mean to go around the obstacle, then it is up to you to find ways and means to go over the obstacle. You have to be persistent. You have to be resourceful. Never ever give up. Always honor your commitment. Always under promise and over deliver. As I told you, never ever make a commitment that you cannot keep. And once you make a commitment, please make sure that you do whatever is necessary to honor the commitment. If you have committed to the customer that the product will be delivered at 5 o'clock to his factory, you need to make sure that at 4:55 that truck is waiting outside the factory. You have to do whatever it takes. No excuses. Whatever it takes to make sure that your commitment to the customer is upheld. Always under promise and over deliver. Now, this is something that I've learned over my years. If, for example, your factory is telling you that they can deliver the product to a customer in 6 days, I would advise you that you commit to the customer that you will deliver the product in 8 days. You make the commitment to deliver in 8 days, and then you deliver the product in 6 days. You make him delighted by over delivering on your promise. This is a sure way to gain the trust of the customer. These are some valuable tips that will enable you make the transition from being just a salesperson to becoming a great expert, a sales professional. Thanks to all of you. Thank you for your valuable time and for your patient hearing. To all of you already in the sales profession, I wish you more success in your job. And for those of you just embarking on a sales career, I wish you a great career ahead of you. Happy selling.
All right. Thank you, Ganapati. We have one question here. I mean, I guess we can open the floor for more questions to come. Anyone who wants to ask a question, but here is one from Suvin. Suvin, do you want to kind of ask the question yourself?
Hi, Subin.
Yeah, anyway, I think he's on mute. His question is, basically, I think it relates to a B2C kind of a scenario, but
Okay.
the common job we get is a door-to-door sales. And when we sell the products to the customer, the company is telling this creates a negative impact on sales job in the minds of a student. Not everyone will like to go to every household selling products. What can we do to remove this mentality in students about sales? If I choose sales as a career, should I be prepared to do a door-to-door sales, or is there a different option in sales?
Okay. This was Suvin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Suvin, like we discussed earlier on, we have these two different sales models, a business to business sales model and a business to customer sales model. Yes, you are right. In the business to customer sales model, there are a few products which are primarily sold on a door to door basis. Now, it all depends on you. If you feel that as an individual you do not want to do it, and you feel that you're not cut out for some reason to make this door to door calls on a daily basis, then there are you can choose not to be in those companies which sell that way. There are many companies, for example, like we discussed, mobile phones. There are so many other even B2C sales models which are not based on this door-to-door selling, and B2B is definitely not based on door-to-door selling. So it is up to you. If you feel you don't want to do it, if you're not cut out for it for whatever reasons, that is your prerogative. You can then decide that you will not choose those jobs which entail you to go door to door and sell.
All right, here's a question from Uma Maheshwari. How to motivate women students to take up marketing as a profession? Interesting question.
See, unfortunately, it is a mindset that people have. Today, there are a lot more women in marketing and sales than there were, say, maybe a decade ago or maybe even 5 years ago. Uh, this is just like the previous question. A lot of people have this mindset that a selling job entails you to go door to door and sell. As a matter of fact, a lot of women in marketing and selling are doing extremely well. If you look at some of the leading companies in India, marketing directors, there are a lot of people, companies which have women as marketing directors. So I think most importantly, they should be presented with the correct perspective of what selling is, of what marketing is, of what the job requires, so that any mistaken notions that they have in their mind about selling as a career is dispelled, one, and B, they have a clear idea of what they are expected to do when they take sales as a career. I see no reason why women should do as well as men, if not better, if they choose to opt for a sales career. I think it's more of a mindset, and I also think it is changing for the better these days.
Any other question from anybody? Do you want to ask the question? You can unmute yourself and ask the question too.
Good morning, sir. This is Pratik here. I just have a question, sir. So we are aware of different products that are available in the market, and at times, how important do you think it is for a person to actually connect with the product that he's selling? Like before taking up the job in sales, is it really necessary for a person to connect with the product?
Pratik, that's a nice question. It definitely helps if you can connect with the product. Say, let's say, if, as an individual, let's say if I'm interested in motorcycles, for example, and I like motorcycles. Now, if I were to get a job which entails me to sell motorcycles, or sell motorcycle components or something to do with motorcycles, then, as you say, I connect with the product and it makes my life easier. I'm more passionate about the product I'm selling. I probably will perform much better. But having said that, it is not practical in the sense that it is not that you will always get an opportunity to sell a product with which you connect to. And while it will help, I don't think it is essential or it's mandatory for you to connect with the product. What you need to do is you need to have trust and belief in the product that this product performs and does what you say it will do. And you should have a thorough knowledge of the product. I think that is far more important. If you can connect with it, well and good. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I have one more question.
Yeah.
This is with respect to B2B sales, sir.
Yeah.
At times, a company, for example, a Michelin is known for, producing good quality tires.
Yeah.
But at times there are certain product variant, which like when they are planned, they look to be performing really good, but on ground they don't perform. But maybe by the end of the year or end of the month, they ask you to clear out the stock that is there. So at those times, how do you deal with such situations? Because you don't have the belief in your product, and you know it is not performing good.
Yeah. Pratik, you in a sales career, you have these extraneous situations, but these are basically not the rule. They are basically the exception to the rule, I would say. Yes, in your sales career, you would have cases where you would have either substandard products. I would not call them substandard products. I would call them seconds, where you have some issues and the company wants you to get rid of it. But I think the crucial point here is you should not make a false promise to your customer just to get rid of your stocks of a particular product. You should not damage your relationship with your existing customer, who would probably still be a loyal customer for your normal products. So please, my request is, when you're disposing of stock like this, do not give customer a false hope or false promise. Do not try and sell this product as a normal product that you may in the short run get away with it. You may be able to get rid of the stocks. Your company will be happy, you will be happy, but in the long run it will damage you, your image as a salesperson, and more importantly the customer's image and the perception that the customer has about your company.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got a couple more. One from Sarat Chandran. During this COVID-19 pandemic, most of the sales are happening through online meetings where we cannot impress our customers just like we will do when we see them in person. So what are the things that we need to keep in mind while having our online meeting with a customer?
Sarat Chandran, you said, right?
Right.
Yeah. Sarat, nice question. Yes, very relevant in today's times. Remember, most of the fundamental things that we spoke about today are true even for an online meeting. Things like make sure you're on time, make sure you're properly prepared for the meeting, proper attire, except for the fact that you are not meeting directly one-to-one and you're meeting in the virtual world, everything else remains the same. Unfortunately, yes, I agree, there is nothing like meeting person to person. But since we do not have control over that situation, the next best thing is to meet virtually. And all the same things apply. Be prepared, be organized, be punctual, have clarity regarding what you want to achieve in the meeting, be courteous, and everything else remains the same. It is just that instead of a direct one-to-one meeting, you're meeting online. Remember, as individuals, we can only control things which are in our control. Things which are not in our control, it doesn't help by worrying about it at all. There is no point in worrying about if I had a one-to-one meeting, it would have been different. You cannot have it. And that's beyond your control. So forget about it and try to do the best that you can do in an online meeting. And trust me, if online meetings are handled properly, correctly, there is no reason why you should not meet with as much success as you can in a one-to-one meeting.
Hey, one more interesting question from Suvin. I think it's more applicable to a lot of engineering students here.
Yeah.
What does a company look for in a fresher while recruiting? As I have an engineering background, and is it necessary to study MBA if I choose a sales as a career?
Suvin, an MBA would help. Those degrees do help in the Indian context. But having said that, I am a firm believer that degrees, grades, mark sheets, gold medals always help only to get you your first job. After that, it's how you make your career grow. And it is the performance that you show in your career. But as an engineer, I feel you normally stand an advantage. You have analytical skills. You need to know what are the skills that you need to develop as a salesperson, your communication skills. We spoke about all those skills that we need to develop. And once you develop those skills, remember what they teach you in your college is just the basics, what you need to be prepared for in life and to help you grow your career. You should start planning now. A word of advice, which is probably digressing from this particular topic: please do not be under the mistaken notion that your education stops the moment you leave your college and enter the real world. On the contrary, I would say your education and your learning process only begins now. You are now learning in the real world. You are learning skills and disciplines that which will help you in the real world. So always keep learning. You must have an open mind, irrespective of what profession you choose, whether it is sales or some other profession. It's equally true that you have to keep an open mind and you have to keep learning from every experience. You can learn from people around you, your colleagues, your superiors, your subordinates. Every interaction with an individual is an opportunity to learn something. And if you have that attitude, you will go far in life. Trust me.
Another important question from Selvi here. How to psychologically advise marketing professionals who are upset in achievements of his or her targets for a quite long time, and they're about to lose their employment opportunity?
The best thing to do is, I'm not a firm believer in numbers, in the sense, I know this may be a bit controversial to say that throughout my career, I've believed in efforts, not on results. I firmly believe that if the proper efforts are put, the results will come. They may get delayed in some occasions, but if you monitor the efforts that a salesperson is putting, trust me, the results which come subsequently, you will not be surprised. And therefore, I'm a great believer in monitoring efforts. Now, it is possible that in some cases, you may find that you have not performed well in your job despite your best efforts. The numbers don't validate your efforts. There can be occasions. Once again, these can be few and far between exceptions to the rule. And if you do so, you must realize that, you look at all the great salespeople, you look at all the great, why salespeople, people itself, failures are stepping stones to success. Every time you fail, it teaches you something. Maybe you're doing something wrong. Maybe there's not a precise fit between you and the sales process that you're involved in right now. Maybe you are not trained in the proper manner. There could be so many reasons. There is no reason to feel guilty and to take the blame entirely on yourself. Like I told you, sales is not an easy profession. You will face rejections. You may have failures coming again and again, but you must be self-motivated and have the positivity to pick yourself up from where you are down and then go back again with full confidence and full positivity. That is the difference between salespeople and sales professionals. They're not scared of rejections. They're not scared of failures, but you must have the confidence to pick yourself up and go back again and do your job with the same diligent manner in which you did, and success will definitely come your way.
All right. So here is, I think this is again possibly a question that's there in a lot of students' minds. Bharat Sai Vail is asking this question. Basically, what is the difference between marketing and sales?
Oh, Bharat. Yes, I think this is a great question. Well, there are so many, I will not go into great details, but I will try to make it as simple as possible. Marketing is what pulls you to the shop. Sales is what makes you buy the product. For example, all those great advertisements about, lifestyles and ads you see about people drinking soft drinks and all that stuff, that is what pulls you to the shop near your end of the street for you to buy a soft drink or a Pepsi. and that's the person in the bunk there, the bunk shop or the small shop there, he makes the sale by giving you a Pepsi. Marketing is the pull, selling is the push. I hope you have understood what I meant.
Interesting questions. Any other question from anybody? We have a couple of minutes before we need to wrap up now, quickly. Okay, here is one from Sai Ishwar. Does product selling and service providing have the same sales cycle, meaning services are targeted to limited audience? How do you keep things rolling in this situation? What would you suggest?
Well, like I told you, the fundamental sales process remains the same, but when you're selling a service, the emphasis placed on certain aspects of the sales process will vary to a large extent. And remember, when you're selling a service, you're basically selling yourself a lot more. So there needs to be a lot more of personal interaction. You must be really concerned. And in my opinion, service selling gives a much greater scope for you to shine through because of your personal qualities and your concern that you show to the customer. The post-sales relationship in service selling is very, very important. You need to focus much harder on building that relationship because you don't have a product's performance to fall back on. Invariably, the service performance it contains a huge chunk of your own performance there, and therefore your performance, your individual excellence in the post-sales relationship, in building trust with the customer, in building a relationship with the customer is far more important, and it also gives you far more opportunity to excel and grow.
Excellent. I think we just running out of time. If there is any quick question, we can address that. Otherwise, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much, Ganapati, for actually providing your time for this entire excellent presentation. I think there's a lot of students who are, have their own thinking in mind, but they're maybe just one question is being asked, but a lot of people have the same questions in mind. Thank you very much for your participation. I think we need to say it's already 5 minutes beyond. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, you have my email address. You can send it out to me. We'll ensure that we try and address your questions. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for attending.
Thanks to all of you. Thank you.